Okay, we are live, and I know I haven't done too many videos lately, but I miss doing videos, and I am so happy to be back. I don't know when the next time I'll do a video. Hold on. I hate that thing. But I'm just super excited today. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I got Paul Elam on my channel, and it has come as a benefit because I very recently joined Regarding Men, which Paul Elam is a very big part of that. So this is just a beating of minds that's just, I think was predestined to happen, but I might be biased on that. But
I'll
how are you
agree
doing
with you.
today, Paul?
I'm doing great, man. Can't complain about anything. I may yet, though. We're early in this interview. I might find lots to complain about. I don't know, but probably not.
Challenge accepted. So, as I mentioned, Paul Elam is one of the big minds behind Regarding Men. Now, you might be familiar with the YouTube show Regarding Men, which features Janice Fiamingo, Paul Elam, and Tom Golden. But it's actually more than that. It is actually a group on regardingmen.com that is a men's only support group. And this is an opportunity for many men to come together just to talk about what's ever on their mind. Now, for obvious reasons, there's not a whole lot that I can say about it because Vegas rules apply, and that whatever's said inside there stays inside there. And I honor that wholeheartedly. But I do want to still talk about it today with Paul to hopefully get more of you out there to join the group, because it is a really great group. And I mean, I just can't say enough about it. So I'm going to stop saying anything about it and just turn it over to Paul. Can you tell us a bit about Regarding Men itself?
Sure, I'll be happy to. It's brainchild, honestly, the brainchild of Tom Golden, uh, who has really dedicated himself to this project, and both in the technical aspects of building the website and developing the technology, and how we're the ergonomics of how we set everything up. But Tom brought it up as an idea, and it just seemed like a natural fit. I mean, one of the problems that we have, and you see this in material all across YouTube and other places where red pill men congregate, concepts like red pill isolation. And what that is in a nutshell is that, we eat some red pills, we see the world differently than anybody else sees it for the most, and all of a sudden, we don't fit. I mean, we've got a great new way of looking at life. We have a way that is of approaching life that's protective of men, and that tries to, explain what they see in the world so the guys don't think they're crazy. And the red pills work effectively, but you end up figuring out that probably nobody else in real world terms thinks anything like you do. And as a matter of fact, people may absolutely object to your worldview and hate it. And, a lot of guys find this, they find it even happening in their own families. And it was sort of fortuitous. We just launched this a few months ago, but it has been a project that we've been working on diligently, Tom, Janice, and myself, for well over a year now, getting ready to launch it, getting everything sorted out to do it. And we did, and it was a piece of magic, in my opinion, absolute magic. It didn't require anybody greasing wheels or overworking to make things happen. These red pill guys came together. They fit with each other. They didn't have to look over their shoulders when they talk in the groups. And you're right, it's Vegas rules there. What's said in there stays in there. And so far, everybody's respected that real well, which I really appreciate. But these are guys talking face to face about, guys can come into those groups and talk about my wife is becoming a bitch, or I'm trying to impress a girl, or I've been falsely accused, or I'm going through a divorce. I'm experiencing parental alienation. All the things that we generally talk about in terms of videos and articles in the red pill community suddenly has become an area where men congregate and talk to each other about these things. And we notice a couple of things right away. What happens, and you can go to places like MGTOW.com and other places, great philosophy there, and the guys are just rip each other's to shreds. There's very little support. Man, you say one word wrong in a sentence, and there'll be five guys, who think you said something wrong, will jump you and flame you because everybody's hiding behind this anonymity. And that tends, as we know across the internet, it brings out the worst in people, the absolute worst. But what happens, do you imagine, when you bring a group of red pill men together? Right now, we're somewhere between 150 and 200 members, and they converge in these groups and talk to each other. Guess what? You might have differences of opinion, but it's all incredibly civil and supportive. As a matter of fact, it is the most supportive environment for men and men's issues that I've ever witnessed, and that includes my 35 years of clinical work as a counselor. As a matter of fact, I saw a lot of that work in the mental health industry as being hostile towards men, that they would go into groups and get ideologues for therapists who had been trained in the feminist mold and who thought toxic masculinity was the main problem, and that's what we need to focus on. Well, there's none of that bullshit here. This is literally men supporting each other. I've had a few people ask me, is this mental health treatment? And my answer is no, it's much better. It's much, much better than anything you could get in the mental health field. And we figured out a way to deliver it to people for as little as $5 a month, if that's what they want. As a matter of fact, I want to make this point real clear too. If you're a man out there and you've been like drugged through the family courts and they wallet raped you in a divorce settlement or in a false accusation, whatever you're going through, if you're broke, that doesn't keep you out. We have scholarships available to guys who want to come there. We're not turning anybody away based on money. But to put it again as succinctly as I can, this is the most supportive environment for men I've ever seen. And I don't mean just, pat on the back kind of support. I mean support for men's real issues. I know I can tell you that in all the years I worked in the mental health field, men were told to open up about their feelings until they did. And then when they opened up about their feelings, they were shamed, generally by mental health professionals. It's like, tell me how you feel. Well, I'm pissed off. She fucked my best friend. She cheated on me and stole money, and I'm outraged. And of course, the therapist, being trained in the feminist mold that women can do no wrong and men can do no right, says, well, what did you do to provoke her to cheat? What did you do to make this happen? What's your role in this? And I'm all for it. You'll see as you attend these groups, and I think you've seen Mad Cat, that men do hold each other accountable for their own choices. I mean, we absolutely have to do that. But it's a loving, supportive, brotherly kind of call to account, not a punitive, judgmental look down your nose. And we don't have flame wars, and we don't have people getting kicked out all the time because they're acting up. This is a totally different environment than the internet has ever had for men and men's issues. It's radically different than anything anybody's seen before. And all you have to do is show up for a group. By the time the group is over, and by the way, some of the groups run on for hours and hours and hours. The facilitator's staying there for the first 90 minutes. And then after that, everybody gets turned loose to do their own thing. And we've had those groups, I think, run 13, 16 hours, something like that. Guys, because they love the environment, because they love a place where they can sit down and feel like they fit, and nobody's calling them crazy. Nobody's calling them a misogynist. Nobody's saying you're whining. None of that. I could go on, but I won't. I think that pretty much sums up how I feel about what's happening.
And that's great to hear from you, because you could tell the passion in your voice about this. I mean, as you said, you have worked in the mental health field. And, that's actually something you talk about in your book, Men-Women Relationships, which is a really good book if you haven't checked it out yet. I just fell in love with it instantly when I read it, and you have some very good points in there. But before I talk about that in more detail, I'd like to add on to what you're saying with my personal experience in the group. Because, I've always felt like I've never fit in anywhere. I'm just too weird. I'm too different. Some of my ideas, like, often within the men's movement, I encounter conservatives. And nothing wrong with that. I perfectly think that's okay. But I'm a liberal. And, of course, being liberal is a dirty word because, oh, my God, you're on the left? Well, no, not really. But being in this group, I don't really feel any shame at all for any of the views I have. Now, there might be some disagreements, but that's just par for the course. Us men, we get passionate, we can argue a little bit, but that's not a bad thing. Anyone who tells you that it would be a bad thing is probably a feminist. And it's like, we do have our differences, and yet it's like we all connect to each other in some way. Hey, it's Rishi. And Guy. So anyways, sorry. It's such a great experience, and I can't express that enough. I wish I could say more just to give you an idea, but I will honestly say that some of the issues that I face in my day-to-day life, I feel like I can't really tell other people. I cannot be public with it because a lot of people kind of give me horrible advice, truth be told. And, I'm sorry, just like sometimes the advice you give me comes from a place of ignorance. You don't want to know. And that's one thing I've noticed with this group is that people try to ask me questions to get clarifications. They truly want to understand what it is that I'm going through. But plus, they don't put an expectation on me that if I don't follow it, I'm insulting them in some way, which I do get in the general public. So and I hate to use this word, but it's an apt term. It is a safe space for men.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Accurate. It is accurate. I hate that term too with a passion, but I don't think there's a better way to describe what you're talking about.
It's a place for men to be men and for us to be vulnerable with each other without fear of being judged. And that's a very real thing. Any man out there knows you cannot be vulnerable or else you're going to be harshly judged. Here, we're allowed to be vulnerable.
I want to add something else too to what you said, because, part of what you said, you talk about feeling like you're different from other people in many senses. I think all of us are. I know that I read The Myth of Male Power in '93 when it first came out. I've been weird ever since. I have not fit in many, many places. And so in that respect, even though I'm a facilitator of the groups there, this brings something personally to me in the same way that it does to you, Mad Cat, is that I feel comfortable in my own skin around a group of like-minded men. And I love the fact that we do not permit women into these groups. We make an exception as a facilitator for Janice Fiamingo to facilitate groups. And of course, if you really just want all men, Janice is not offended if you don't attend her groups, if you just go to the ones that Tom and I do. But a lot of guys show up because they love Janice. She's a great human being, a great person. But this brings just as much for me in my personal life. I look forward to every one of these groups that I do because they're a sense of what life should feel like for people. You should feel like you fit and you belong. You should feel accepted. You should feel supported by your peers. They're all things that are supposedly part of normal life that unfortunately adopting red pill philosophy removes a lot of that. But we have found a way through the technology of like you and I are using right now to have as many men as we want talking. And it's just, like I said, it's an amazing experience, and it does as much for me as it does for you, brother.
And, if nothing else, the great thing about this group, I mean, other than everything, I mean, that alone is worth it. But I get to talk to Paul. I mean, I've been intimidated for so many years to talk to you because it's like the great Paul Elam. You do such great articles. You've done such great interviews and talking points.
The bullshit is piling up.
And it was like for years I kept trying to find a way to talk to you, but I was like, well, everyone wants to talk to him and I don't really have anything new to say. And then of course I emailed you about your book, and that's how we started talking to each other. But like the first time we actually spoke to each other was in this group, and this guy is actually quite humble. I'm sorry to destroy the image, but it's like he doesn't really want any credit for what he's done. He keeps putting it on the rest of us that we're really making this movement happen. And the same thing with Janice. She is so humble too.
Well, it's true. I mean, those groups are nothing if not for the participants in them. And basically, all we did was get a few Zoom accounts, build a website, and invite people to join us. And what we found was what I think is a wonderful response, and we're continuing to grow. We get new members every day in this. But it really is about the participants. I'm not pretending to be humble here. I mean, you don't have a group without the members. And you guys are what makes this work. And again, it makes it work for me too. I mean, this is like a godsend for me because I felt really isolated for a long, long time. Used to more attacks than anything else. And now I get to go to a place nearly every day. And by the way, regarding men groups are there every day, and we're adding more as time goes along. 7 days a week, you've got the availability to join with other red pill men, whatever you're going through. Here's something else I want to add about this too, Magcat, is that, I get emails all the time, unfortunately, from guys who think, I've got some great resources. They're in trouble in a divorce. They're facing false accusations, and they desperately need help. And I have to write them back and tell them, I've had to write them back for years and tell them, I'm sorry. I don't, I'm just one guy. And yes, there's a group of us at A Voice for Men, but we're not flush with resources. We barely make ends meet financially all the time. And so there's nothing I can do to help a guy in trouble in the past, but now there is. It's not going to solve their false accusation problem. It's not going to solve their divorce problem or their parental alienation problem or whatever it is that they're going through with some hostile woman in relationship life, somebody that's abusive and destructive, but they don't have to go through it alone. They can come to Regarding Men and get peer support. And that keeps a lot of guys sane. I'm already getting emails from people saying, thank God you did this because I was losing my mind. both with isolation, loneliness, everything else, and with the problems I was dealing with. And we have found in these groups that when you're dealing with these kind of problems, that the kind of problems that invariably stem from male-female relationships in modern times, you do have guys there who are experienced and who do have good advice and suggestions about how to handle yourself and how to handle these problems. So when I used to had to tell people, sorry, too bad, there's nothing I can do, at least now I can say, you can come to this group and people will listen to what you're saying. You won't be alone anymore. And that does count for something. I think it counts for a great deal.
And I 100% agree with that one, because as you mentioned, going to see a therapist, it's more miss than hit. It's rare to find one that's really going to help you out and not give you feminist, social justice warrior, useless crap. All of us have different experiences, and you will be amazed on the response that you will get. And I've been amazed with the response that I get. I mean, even as different as I feel from some of the other members, they have given me advice that I had not considered, that it's always good to have like an outside person looking at your life and saying, hey, have you thought about this? Oh, no, I haven't thought about that. And it's an invaluable resource. There is really nothing else in the world that can replace that. And that is another good reason to join this. But I want to talk real quick about your counseling, which you actually mentioned in this book, which I also found interesting. You were a truck driver and a counselor around the same time. But
alternatingly.
I know you have talked about this on other interviews, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about Paul before he became red-pilled, and what was his experience like in mental health? I mean, did he really grasp that there was something more going on, or was he just a little too blind?
Way too blind. Pathetically, embarrassingly blind. I did walk around Mad Cat knowing for years. I think I started picking up on it in the mid-'80s, that I knew something was wrong between men and women. I just knew there was. I had no way to articulate what it was. I had no way to put my finger on what it was. But I did have this gnawing feeling that the deck was stacked against men and in favor of women. But I was still so blue-pilled that's where, as soon as I would engage that line of thinking, I would divert back into denial to keep from approaching it, because it was just, these are unthinkable things, that maybe women have too much power. Maybe men don't have enough power in relationships. Maybe men don't have enough power in their lives. Keep in mind, I was, a practicing counselor at this time in the 80s, and everything was about empowering women and seeing women as a special population. And what could we do? We had special women's tracks and treatment programs for chemical dependency because of women's special needs in that area, even though we really didn't clearly define what those needs were, except to the extent that there was an overwhelming sort of bias and a narrative that women's chemical dependency and alcohol problems stem from abusive relationships with men. It's not because the women are drunks or drug addicts, God forbid. And of course, that was cheating women out of decent treatment. When we start projecting blame for their choices and their lifestyles onto the men in their lives, we diverted them away from answers, and we were calling that a special track for women to address their individual needs, or to address their needs as women. So this stuff just wasn't something you think about. I think human males too, and especially in the West, we're conditioned not to go to battle with women. We're not supposed to be fighting women. We're supposed to be defending them. and doing things for them and what have you. So my line of thinking just wasn't ready until 93 when I read Farrell's book and like, oh shit, this is what's been lurking in the back of my mind all this time. And it was like I read the book in a couple of nights without barely sleeping. I was so engrossed in it. And of course, that turned me around and changed my thinking. And then, of course, I became weird and pariah, and nobody wanted to be connected to me. I used to have all kinds of friends in the treatment business, and all of a sudden, oh, this guy is weird. He's getting weird. You know, he's talking about men like we should pay attention to their needs. We don't do that. We pay attention to women. And it was so I was as blue gets, Mad Cat. And if I hadn't read it in that book, if somebody had approached me like in 1990 and said, well, it's really men who struggle for power, I would have dismissed them like they were nuts.
Well, it's interesting because, and I'm sure you do too, but I still encounter a lot of people that have this mentality of we have to do what we can for women. And that when, with the research of my book, I'm always seeing facts and I present it to people. Like if someone's like, hey, how's this a thing? And I'll show them 5 articles, you know, because I just have a whole big folder on Dropbox with all of this stuff. But it's like I present the idea that men and women are raped in equal numbers, and they're like, oh, so are men raping men as well? It's like it can't get to the idea that women can do bad. So, but I would say that things are starting to change, maybe a little bit, but we are starting to see a positive change. And I like to think that you've had a large part of that. Not you alone. A lot of other people have had a large part of that. But going back to when you first began to notice things, when you became Red Pill, when you started being a part of this movement, what was it like back then for people who can't picture what life is like now? I mean, now it's a lot more widespread, but back then, barely anyone was talking about it. What was it like for you when you got into this movement, and what kept you going?
Well, one thing, to be honest, that it was like was very depressing. Very depressing. I never, you know, in 1994, I felt isolated to the point of, I don't want to say I was at suicidal level, but I was pointed in that direction. I had honestly lost a lot of friendships, a lot of professional affiliations. My relationship with women had soured. And I mean, it isn't, I didn't run around twirling my mustache thinking of ways to oppress women or any of the bullshit that I get accused of by the left media. But I started doing something very novel with women, and it's telling them no. And no, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to buy that. No, I'm not going to go visit your mother with you. No, 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 no. And of course, that socially, I found that I was sleeping alone quite a bit until I figured out that game a little bit more. So being a red pill guy in a world that didn't even have the term red pill, because they didn't make the Matrix till 99, and I was red pill in 93. And it was depressing and isolating and dispiriting too, because you got to understand the clinical application, the side of this. We were literally bashing men and calling it treatment. That's what the chemical dependency and the mental health in general field does. It still does it to this very day. It bashes men. It questions masculinity. Any sign of strength or assertion in men is regarded as control and brutishness. And men go into family therapy, and they very quickly find out that there's an alliance between the therapist and the wife, and that now he's facing 2 people who are attacking him at every level. Working in an environment with this going on around you all the time, knowing what you know, and me taking men into process groups. And basically, I started pulling the pins on the hand grenades. I started addressing these issues in group and telling men that they were being fed a line of bullshit and that they would do well to consider rejecting it. And what I noticed, though, the one good sort of silver lining in this is that when I did that with men, they ate it up. They simply soaked it up like sponge. They had been beaten and battered in many ways by the mental health profession. And so I got to be the guy to come along and say, you know what, there's nothing wrong with you because you're a man. As a matter of fact, that's a great asset and it needs to be honored. And their jaws would drop because in the treatment industry, as we know it, the line is, part of your drug addiction is toxic masculinity. We need to look at some of the aspects of masculinity that are no longer useful, that are harmful to you. What kind of man are you? That was there, man. And and like I said, I think it's still there in full force. It's probably worse. But the one silver lining amid all that isolation and honest depression that I felt was that I got to deliver something I believed in. And one thing I knew about all this stuff, because I had parroted the feminist bullshit, Mad Cat, for a long time, never fully believing what I was saying. Or I would tap into my inner white knight and feel better about what I was saying because I was protecting these poor downtrodden women. All that changed, and it wasn't easy.
So, at what point after reading Farrell's book, The Myth of Male Power, did you feel like you were starting to make a difference for men?
It was a long time. I had to find a new language, a new way I had to take all this information I'd gotten from the Myth of Male Power, find ways to articulate it in my work. And I did get the positive attention from a couple of peers here and there, people that would very quietly say, you know, I agree with what you're doing, Paul. Please don't tell anybody I said anything. Would get that kind of sort of mock support. And I had to find a language to communicate all this. I had to find my own bearing inside of myself because, you know, every one of us who have eaten red pills goes through red pill isolation, red pill rage. I mean, I had all the anger, everything else that goes on with people taking red pills, and there was literally nobody to talk to about it. It didn't make sense to anybody. I knew a couple of psychiatrists that I had worked with and who I admired very much. They were brilliant men. But when I started trying to talk to them about this information, you could see the fear well up in them. And saying, I'm not getting anywhere near this. So it was hard and it was isolating. And I started taking some of my frustration and I would write letters to the editor of our local newspaper in Houston and other places. And every once in a while, one of them would get published, just trying to get some sort of counter narrative out there. But at the time, there wasn't even enough of an internet to have any impact. But I did before, let's see, I'd have to calculate the year. It was about 10 years before I launched, or 12 years before I launched A Voice for Men, that I actually acquired the domain. I knew it was coming. I knew that the internet would be something, but it wasn't ready. And by 2009, it was ready. And that's when I launched A Voice for Men. And of course, that's where I started connecting with other people. So from 93 to about 2009, I was on my own.
So looking back at that and looking at today with the Regarding Men group, let's pretend that maybe Warren Farrell had set up a Regarding Men's group like it is today. How do you feel that might have helped you during these years that you felt alone?
Well, to be honest, and to be honorable for Warren, Warren did out of New York City did set up groups, men's groups, and did a lot of work in that regard. That was nothing I was ever going to have access to because at that time groups had to be done in real world terms. There was no Zoom, there was no Skype, none of that stuff. If I would have had that available, I think my transition would have been a lot smoother. I think I could have gone through the red pill rage much quicker than I did because I was really angry for years about this. And keep in mind, I kept getting reasons to be angry. Would, for instance, just an example, be talking about an intake at the treatment center that I was talking about, that I was working at, and whoever was doing the intake work on him, oh yeah, he's violent, he's this, he's that, and then you go and actually talk to the guy, and it turns out he's the victim. I had one guy who the whole treatment team had labeled an abuser, and we were looking at anger management for him and all kinds of other stuff from feminist programs in Houston to train him out of that. And I went and asked him, and he showed me on his head, on the very top of his head, where he'd gotten 12 stitches because she crowned him with a fireplace poker while he was sleeping. And our reaction was to send him to anger management and to talk to her about a shelter simply because she said he was the violent one. And so every time incidents like these were a routine part of my life. And when they happened, the anger came welling back up again, over and over and over again. I think if I had had people to talk to about that at the time, that I would have been able to process that a lot more easily. As it stood then, I was just raging and furious at the system, at the people I worked with, and at society in general, just for being so stupid about these issues.
Going back to the group that we're both a part of now, what are some of your hopes for the future for this group? What direction are you hoping that this goes, or things that you're going to try to possibly do in the next years to come?
1,000 groups a year. That's my heart and soul, my goal for this. That means 3 groups a day, every day of the week will top us out at 3,000. And we're on our way to getting there. We already do about 400 groups a year as it is. And we're going to up that, but I would like to see 1,000 groups a year. I would love to see involvement from Indian MRAs. I would like to see geographic groups started for different populations. And this, I think, will happen over a period of time. But the main goal, if we can produce 1,000 men's meetings a year, that is literally thousands upon thousands of men that we can help. And there's going to be a lot of lives saved in the midst of doing that work. Other than that, I mean, I still leave political activism to the people who want to treat men's issues politically. I'm all fine with that. That's not my cup of tea. But we spent 10 years at A Voice for Men trying to reach the world with a different narrative about men. And guess what? I think we succeeded. There's a lot more discussion about this stuff than there ever has been before. And I think a lot of it is because of what came out of A Voice for Men. Our job is done there. People know that, it's why only like 17% of women identify as feminist. They know it's bullshit. And they know that men have problems too. And I think we've gone a long way into making that narrative acceptable. And now what we need to do is provide service. We don't need to recruit more activists. What we need to do is say, how can I help you? And you're not alone. Come join us here. You belong. You're welcome. We want you there. We care about your problems. think of it. Isn't that what's missing in the lives of men? You know, men kill themselves at 4-to-1 rate of women during regular times. During divorce or breakup, it's 11-to-1 that men kill themselves. How many of those men don't have to die? How many of them might be helped if they just weren't alone? Because what we do with men going in the blue pill world, going through divorce, is tell them to man up. Hey, have a beer. You'll get over it. Just deal with it. Oh man, are you going to whine about this? And they get this from their families, and not to mention their peers and their places of employment. So I think that what we do is we reach out to men. This is the future of the men's movement to me. It's the only future that I want to be a part of, is how do we provide service? Anil Kumar, one of the Indian MRAs, one of the more prominent ones, he doesn't know it, but he's a mentor of sorts to me. What they did over there in India was they figured out that if you offer men service, if you offer them support over a long enough period of time and let them get involved and benefit from that support, then activism will spring naturally from that. It'll grow organically out of it. And he's talked to me about this for years. And so when Tom came up with the idea, it all made perfect sense, and it became sort of a perfect storm, and it's very successful right now. These groups, gosh, some of them are getting so large that we're going to have to figure out something to divide them up so that everybody gets time in there. But that's my vision of the future for the men's movement is, how do we actually directly help men? No bullshit, no more worries about politics. Yes, Biden's coming. We know that. The Dear Colleague letter's coming back. Yes, we know that. What are you going to do with those guys when they get burned? And we want to be there for them.
And, I really love that. And that's one reason why I really want to be a part of Regarding Men in all the ways that I have. And I'm always looking for new ways to add to Regarding Men. And actually, I've purchased one of the higher subscriptions as an opportunity to be a part of that, which is one of the perks, is that you get to be a part of a monthly meeting. But I 100% agree with what you're saying. And one of the problems that I have seen within the movement is sometimes we get a little too focused on what women are doing. And I understand, women are basically our ambassadors. People care more about what a woman says than what a man says. And if they're doing the work out there on our behalf, that's a great thing. But it also means that a lot of men are pushed by the sideline. But the things that they're trying to do, the help that they're trying to get, can easily be ignored. And it's not really a failing of the men's movement. Really, it's more of, this is how society and culture has been structured up until this point. And like Paul said, he still was a white knight even after he took his proverbial red pill, and it was something he had to learn to get over. And I feel like Regarding Men can be a step towards that direction of, how do we help men? We're a movement of helping men. How do we do more to help men? And I just think that this group, like I said, is going to be a step towards that.
I believe it is too. And by the way, for anybody interested, we'll get different places this video gets distributed. We'll get a link for you, but regardingmen.com/join. Like I said, you can get in for $5. If you're dead broke, you can get in for free. If you want to support, if you think there's value in this effort, there's other ways and additional amounts that you can contribute. But if you're just there looking for a connection with other red pill guys, come on.
And, you're 100. I also agree with you that, if we can give men a space that is safe, I'm not saying that the other way around, but if we can give them a space where they can talk to each other, this is where activism can come from. And while I've always tried to have activism on my own, now I don't have to be on my own anymore. I can talk to other men. I can give my ideas or discuss anything that's going on in my life. And I've started to see that a lot of people are starting to do more things. So I'm very excited about the future of this.
I am too. This has worked out better than I think any of us had hoped for in the beginning, very quickly. And I think that there's a pent up need for this is part of the problem. But yeah, this is if I'm still alive 10 years from now and I'm still an activist, which I will be if I'm still alive, you could ask me the same question, you get the same answer. We need to quit pussyfooting around. And I mean, I think it's great to write articles and to do videos and to open up dialogue. This is how this stuff has started rolling. But the proof is in the pudding. If you care about men, one of the things anybody can do is just come participate in the groups. If you want to personally help other men yourself, show up in the groups. They're there with problems that they're talking about, and you might have valuable feedback for them. So it gives everybody right off the bat their own little avenue of activism just by showing up the first time.
Well, so I want to start coming down to a close on this. Just if anyone in chat other than Chris, because, well, he's just being silly. He's actually a friend, people. So if you think he's just being offensive, he's just joking around. So please don't take him too seriously. But I do consider him a close friend. Or whatever. But if any of you have any questions you'd like to ask Paul, please put it in the chat. But we still got about 13 minutes to go, but I want to put that offer out there for people. And I also want to make a quick mention that, I'm sure Paul gets this a lot, that, he's told to check his male privilege. And I know I am, and I decided to do something about it. Here in my wallet, I have my male privilege card.
Check it.
And when I'm told to check my male privilege, I look at all of these privileges that I have that women don't. To name a few: more likely to get suspended in school, not recognized as a victim of domestic violence, higher rates of suicide. So you can get this on my website. I know this is a cheap shill, but I don't give a shit. boysmenissues.com. It's listed down below. You can get this for 75 cents.
Buy a dozen of them. Keep one, give 11 away.
And Paul, do you have your male privilege card?
Not on me, which is an embarrassment, but I do. Matter of fact, I have more than one. And I will be passing them out at any gatherings we have in the future. We ever get one of the other things that we've done before COVID was that we had men's retreats. And now we have a platform where we can populate those retreats much better than we did before. But we ever get rid of this godforsaken pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe about the coronavirus, once it's done, we'll be going back to that. And I would love to take these online video meetings that we're having and make more of them real world. And that would be a blast.
I will say that one of my dreams, one of my bucket list things is to smoke a cigar with Paul, maybe have some Tex-Mex.
It'll have to be on my cheat day, but absolutely love to do that with you, Mad Cat. Absolutely love to get a big fat El Grande Gordo Cigarro and fire it up over some greasy enchiladas. That works for me, man.
I do like what Rishi has said in the chat. I am reading all of these, and Rishi is actually someone I met through the group, and I am proud to get to know him, and we've become friends outside of it. He says that I can confidently say men will gain more out of regarding men in just 1 month than all the lifetime of counseling and therapy they've tried in the past. There's a lot of empathy and wisdom there.
Hey, Rishi. Shout out to Rishi. Great guy. And speaking of the empathy and wisdom, he's one of the guys providing it. Absolutely. But I agree with you, Rishi, 100%. I really do. That you'll get more out of regarding men, and you can pay big money for lots of therapy if you want to. But I recommend to any man to try, 10 or 15 group meetings at Regarding Men for $5 and then figure out which one benefited you more.
Or I prefer to go another way with this. I dare you to do it. Come on, man. What are you, a chicken? Come on. What's $5?
I'll double down on that dare. I double dog dare you.
So with the ICMI coming up, I know that you're speaking for that. Can you give us a quick idea of what your speech is going to be about?
Mine is going to be done interview style. I've gotten so busy with this project and with other things going on in my personal life that I just didn't have time to produce a 45-minute speech. But I will be interviewed by Mike Buchanan and Elizabeth Hobson of Justice for Men and Boys, which I'm looking forward to very much. Two people I admire a lot and who have a great deal of knowledge about men's issues. So they'll know to ask the right questions.
Oh, were you saying I don't know how to ask the right questions?
That's exactly what I was saying, man. Just terrible question. Past hour, wasted. I'll never get this time back in my life. Just kidding.
Well, just to let everyone else know, although I'm sure all of you already know, I will be in ICMI this year. This is such a big honor for myself. I've wanted to do it for a number of years. Who knew that you just had to go and volunteer? I was waiting to be asked to it, and it's like, oh, I can just volunteer? That's so much easier. But I will be talking about how we don't need Paul to really make things happen in this movement. All of us that are in this movement can go out there and do something. And no matter how big or small, it really adds up. And I'm going to use my own personal life as an example because, I've been disabled for like 8 years, but I've only been in the movement for 7 years. And I used to let myself believe that I just couldn't do anything at all. I mean, I couldn't work a job. What could I do for the men's rights? And in the last 7 years, I have done quite a bit. And while I don't like to phrase it this way, it's also a very good question to ask. If a disabled guy can do so much for the movement, what can you do with a fully functional brain?
And sometimes a fully functional brain isn't your best friend. I walked around all my adult life with a fully functional brain, and 98% of my beliefs about men and women were bullshit. You can do a lot with what you have. And man, I just wanted to give you a slow clap for that. Yeah, the movement, I'm here in the movement. The movement already doesn't need me per se. What it needs is people willing to stand up and speak truths of power. And as long as you're willing to do that, and if you're willing to come support other men in an environment like Regarding Men, that's all it needs.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes to go. So let's go ahead and just do some shilling. What are some ways that people can find you and your work and any other thing you're working on?
Best way to contact me is to join Regarding Men. Of course, I've got a YouTube channel, An Ear for Men, where the Regarding Men discussions are made. But if you're interested in my work, And this regarding men is my work now. My work isn't producing videos. My work isn't writing so much anymore. I've written 700 articles. I've written a book, and I have co-written 4 other books. So I'm done with all that. So if you're interested in my work is in facilitating group meetings for men at regardingmen.com. And you can get there at regardingmen.com/join.
Okay. And as many of you know, I am moving away from videos and focusing on writing. I'm not completely giving up on videos, but I feel my best destiny is being a writer, and I'm happy to be writing for the movement with my Boys and Men's Issues handbook and fact book. And in fact, Paul Elam has agreed to write the foreword to the first book, so I'm really looking forward to that. But I honestly believe that it will be one of the greatest books for the men's movement. Of course, I am being egotistical, but you kind of have to be when you write a book. So,
And, you know, men are allowed to have egos. Men's egos accomplish greatness in this world. Anybody tells you otherwise and thank you for that comment, Guy. I really appreciate it. But anybody that tells you that, oh, he's just egocentric, yeah, right. Think of people like Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, all the great inventors, all the great writers of symphonies, great artists. Guess what? They were all very, very strong egos. It's important. It's a good trait for men to have a strong ego. And the world wants to lie to you about that and tell you that it's not. That's just the world's shit test to see if it can control you. So when people tell you don't be so full of ego, well, tell them watch me.
and the last question that I want to ask you before we hop off is I'm curious about how you and Janice met, if you can tell us in a few quick minutes.
Well, like probably a million other men, I fell in love with Janice Fiamingo the moment I started seeing Steve Brulet's videos of her talking on college campuses and speaking truth to power and standing up to hordes of people that wanted to silence her. She also, you know, and I got to say this about Janice, you know, my work has gotten a lot of criticism, some even from within the red pill community, who are saying, Paul, you can't be that brash. You can't talk that vulgarly. You can't do this. You can't be more like Warren Farrell. And Janice Fiamingo was not one of the ones who ever fed into that. She's always been totally behind my work, thinks it's necessary, and she thinks the way I do it is necessary. I got to meet her for the first time in London in 2016 at an ICMI, and I got to meet her again in Chicago at this last ICMI. She and her husband, David, are very, very fine human beings, in addition to both being quite brilliant and gifted. They're both also very kind, wonderful human beings, and I'm just proud to call Janice a friend. I really am.
Yeah, being able to talk to you, Janice, Tom, and so many of the other members has been an absolute delight. You're all so approachable, and I just kind of let your popularity get ahead of you that I thought maybe it would just be difficult. But honestly, you join these groups, you get to be in the room with these people. They're really easy to talk to. So
I hope so, because that's our aim. We want guys to feel wanted in there, because they are.
all right, so be on the lookout for future upcoming videos of Regarding Men with Paul, Janice, and Tom. Be sure to check out the website. Any guys out there seeing this, like I said, I dare you to come. Paul will double dog dare you to come and just check it out. $5. I can understand $5 being a lot of money. That's a lot of money to me, but it is worth it. And like Rishi said, 1 month here will be more than enough, more valuable than years in a counseling session. And you might be convinced to pay $5 every month. That's $60 a year. It's a worthy investment. I kind of feel like maybe Paul's charging a little too less, but don't let him hear that.
Well, no. Oh God, that's an idea. Maybe we need to quadruple it. No, just kidding. The price is fine. Because believe it or not, this is not about making money. We want the operation to stay afloat. We want all the bills paid and everything because we, like I said, several Zoom accounts, web hosting, and we've got web development work that has to be done here and there. But this is not about making wheelbarrows full of cash. It's about getting as many men together as we can in an environment, well, just like you said, Mad Cat, in safe space. And that's a worthwhile goal.
Well, that comes to a close to our video today. I thank you so much, Paul, for doing this.
Happy to.
Like 2 years ago, this would have been like the greatest honor of my life. And it's still a great honor, but now I kind of think of you as a friend, but it's just still so wonderful to have you.
Well, I think of you in the same way, Mad Cat. Definitely.
All right. So all the links are down below. And thank you for everyone in the chat, even Chris K. I know he's being a troll, but he's really a good guy. So anyways, everyone take care.
Bye-bye.